Elena's first night shift begins as the station clock hits 0210, and she walks alone into the damp, cold corridor leading to the perimeter around Deep Cell. Above Elena, only pale green emergency strips along the ceiling are still lit, painting broken bands of light and shadow across the damp metal walls. As Elena kneels to open a pressure sensor control box, a very soft metallic tapping rings out from the wall they share with the Deep Cell chamber. Elena first assumes it's just metal expanding under pressure, but the even rhythm and deliberate pauses in the tapping make her lift her head and listen more closely. The tapping repeats in varying long and short bursts, and Elena finds herself silently counting, as if someone were knocking out a code meant specifically for her. Elena takes the wrench in her hand, hesitates for a second, then knocks 3 short taps against the nearby conduit, sending back a clumsy reply. The tapping falls completely silent for a few of Elena's pounding heartbeats, then returns in a new series of sounds, longer and more complex, as if Nairis is considering how to answer Elena. Elena glances toward the darkened Deep Cell viewport and sees only a deep pit of black, but her spine prickles as she knows Nairis is right there, listening to her. For a brief moment, Elena feels she is no longer in an artificial station, but standing inside an undersea cavern where an ancient intelligence is knocking, asking to speak. Ikaro's neutral voice abruptly cuts through the moment, reminding Elena that her sensor inspection protocol is running 3 minutes behind standard. Elena hurriedly notes a few readings on her checklist, then dares a single short tap on the conduit like a farewell, before leaving the Deep Cell area. At mealtime, Elena sits in the station mess with a tray of bland synthetic food, forcing down each bite amid the noisy chatter of another shift coming off duty. At a nearby table, Marek eats while bragging to 2 other scientists that he has cut the Deep Cell specimen's rations even further to push its biological stress response. One of them chuckles and suggests Marek should starve it a few more days and see if it tears itself apart from madness, making Elena's stomach twist. Marek drops his voice in delighted excitement as he mentions that the first major dissection run on Nairis is being proposed, and if approved, it will be a once-in-a-century opportunity for the whole station. Elena pushes her tray away, unable to swallow another bite, and quietly leaves the mess while Marek's laughter still echoes behind her. In the seldom-used technical monitoring room, Elena sits alone before a bank of screens, accessing the Deep Cell ration logs to verify what Marek said. The graph on the screen shows Nairis's rations being cut step by step over weeks, dropping from survival maintenance toward the edge of wasting study threshold. Elena switches to the initial Deep Cell mission reports, but most sections are blacked out, leaving only a few lines about communication attempts deemed non-productive. A phrase about missing divers flashes briefly before the interface automatically locks Elena's access, making her heart sink. The next night, Elena returns to the Deep Cell sector with her tool cart, a pack of synthetic nutrients hidden in the bottom drawer, food she skipped her own meal to bring for Nairis. Elena activates the sample conduit test mode on the control panel, opens a small hatch connected to the cell, and slides the nutrient pack inside, as if she were just sending a test sample. When the system reports sample delivered, Elena hurries to the observation viewport, heart racing, to see how Nairis will react to the unscheduled food. In the darkness below, one massive blue arm of Nairis slowly reaches out, long fingers closing around the nutrient pack with the care of someone afraid to break something fragile. Elena holds her breath as Nairis lifts the food, not tearing it open like a starving beast, but carefully breaking the seal and tasting it in small sips like an unexpected gift. After finishing, Nairis looks directly up to where Elena stands, her amber eyes not at all feral, but filled with a quiet, heavy gratitude. Then Nairis bends down to the floor, using bioluminescent algae and moisture on the metal surface to draw faint lines and curves, as if sketching a map. Through the glass, Elena realizes Nairis's drawing is slowly taking shape as a simple layout of Abyss-9, with a few glowing points emphasized more than the others. Elena quickly raises her handheld console to capture an image of the drawing, her heart hammering as she realizes Nairis not only understands the station, but is trying to warn them about something. That night, lying on the bunk in her cramped sleeping quarters, Elena reopens the image of Nairis's map on the small screen, pale blue light washing over her thoughtful face. Elena can't fall asleep, because every time she closes her eyes, she sees Nairis's amber gaze and the glowing points on the map overlapping perfectly with her memories of vibration alerts around Abyss-9's hull. The next morning, Elena sits in the technical monitoring room with a cold cup of coffee beside her, zooming in on the photo of the glowing map Nairis drew on the cell floor. Elena brings up the official structural map of Abyss-9 on a second screen, placing it side by side with Nairis's drawing to compare every pipe and junction. As she overlays the two images, Elena grows more stunned when she realizes the bright points Nairis emphasized match exactly with the highest pressure joints on Abyss-9's hull. Elena pulls up the vibration graphs logged by Icaro over the past week, plotting them over the diagram to see whether the alert points match Nairis's glowing marks. When the red peaks of the vibration data line up perfectly with the glowing dots on Nairis's aura, Elena feels a cold shiver run down her spine. Elena quietly asks Icaro if there have been any official reports about abnormal vibration around the deep cell sector this month. Icaro's even voice tells Elena that multiple low-level alerts were recorded, but most were tagged as noise and marked to be ignored by Marek's research department. Elena asks Icaro to replay camera footage of the hull at one of the alert points, and the screen shows metal plating subtly twisting in the dark water. Elena whispers to Icaro, asking why this wasn't reported directly to Jonas or Silas, and the AI simply replies that classification priority belongs to Marek's research team. Without hesitating further, Elena compiles a summary report, attaching Nairis's map and the vibration data, and sends an urgent meeting request to Jonas and Silas. In the small briefing room, Jonas stands with arms folded staring at the 3D model of Abyss-9, while Elena explains how Nairis's drawing matches the danger points on the hull. Jonas asks Elena in a skeptical tone why she believes a confined specimen could possibly understand Abyss-9's complex technical structure. Elena answers Jonas that Nairis has been observing and feeling the station's vibrations the entire time she's been imprisoned, and is clearly trying to warn the humans about spreading fractures. Silas leans against the wall, tablet in hand, as he scans the vibration data, his eyes narrowing when he sees the alert frequency rising for consecutive days. Silas gently interjects, suggesting Jonas authorize an additional structural inspection around the points Nairis marked, just as a precaution. Jonas sighs and agrees to limited inspections, but dismisses the idea of treating Nairis as a source of information, stressing that she is still a high-level threat. As Elena leaves the briefing room, she hears Marek at the far end of the corridor talking to Jonas over comms about accelerating approval for the Nairis dissection plan. Marek's phrase, "before the hull degrades further," echoes in Elena's ears, making her realize he sees the looming disaster as an excuse to dissect Nairis sooner. After her shift, Elena deliberately returns to the deep cell sector, carrying a handheld scanner to check the hull spots near the cell, as Silas suggested. Elena's scanner continually flickers, yellow and orange, at positions matching Nairis's glowing marks, reporting rising pressure and signs of structural fatigue. When Elena returns to the viewport, she sees that on the cell floor, Nairis has added branching lines from the bright points, stretching outward like spreading fractures. Nairis looks up, placing her hand on her chest, then pointing toward the hull wall, pulling her hand outward in a diagonal motion, as if describing something tearing open. Elena presses her palm to the glass, silently telling Nairis that she understands. The hull is being stretched, and no one up here is listening to the warning. At that moment, a sudden tremor shakes all of Abyss-9, making the ceiling lights flicker and forcing Elena to grab the doorway frame to keep from falling. Alarms blare as Icaro announces a minor pressure leak in an auxiliary compartment near the area Nairis's map marked in the deepest red. On the main screen, Elena watches a fine mist of water spraying into the auxiliary compartment, as another maintenance team rushes to patch it with temporary seals. After the shaking subsides, Jonas conducts a quick briefing over screens, his voice tense but insisting it was just a localized incident, now under control. Even so, Elena catches a brief flicker of genuine worry in Silas's eyes on a small feed as he glances at the vibration chart from the recent shock. After the briefing, Marek sends an internal notice to the whole station, proposing they accelerate the Nairis dissection plan to harvest data before the station's structure changes further. Standing alone at the deep cell viewport afterward, Elena sees Nairis no longer curled up but sitting upright, eyes alert like a sentry waiting for something worse. Nairis touches the glowing points on the map at her feet, then points upward to the ceiling, where Abyss-9's hull bears the full weight of the ocean. Elena understands that if Abyss-9 keeps ignoring these signs and continues to treat Nairis as nothing more than a specimen to carve up, the fractures in the hull will be only the beginning of something far worse. In Abyss-9's largest briefing room, Marek stands before the holotable with the words, "Nairis, Dissection Run 01, hovering in light across his ambitious face. A 3D model of Nairis's body rotates slowly in midair, sections marked in red, yellow, and green according to the dissection priority levels Marek is presenting. Jonas stands on the far side of the holotable, arms crossed, staring through Nairis's model with a cold expression as if reading a cost report. In the back row, Elena sits tucked in with her handheld console, feeling out of place amid the eager looks of scientists listening to Marek talk about a historic opportunity. Marek points to the full anesthesia section on Nairis's model and explains they will extract at least 4 major tissue types, even if the specimen does not fully survive. A gray-haired scientist sitting near Elena clicks his tongue appreciatively, whispering that, if this works, we'll rewrite the deep-sea biology textbooks. Jonas asks Marek how long it will take to prepare the surgical room and anesthetics for Nairis, his tone as dry as if discussing a pump maintenance schedule. Marek replies that within 2 work cycles they can begin, adding that, if the hull keeps degrading, we have even more reason not to delay. Unable to stand it any longer, Elena raises her hand, drawing a few annoyed glances as her voice asks whether anyone has considered that Nairis is trying to warn them about fracture points. Marek gives a thin smile and tells Elena that Nairis's drawings are merely unconscious repetitive behavior, with no real informational value. Elena clenches her fists and insists to Jonas that Ikaro's vibration data matches Nairis's map, and that ignoring it is choosing to blind themselves. Jonas cuts Elena off with a short wave of his hand, saying the alerts have been handled procedurally, and that Elena's job is to keep systems running, not argue over a specimen. As the meeting breaks up and people file out, Elena lingers a heartbeat longer, watching Nairis shrink to a blinking red icon in the hollow's corner like a tagged commodity. In the corridor, Marek walks alongside Jonas, quietly saying that if we wait any longer, Abyss-9 might crack before we can harvest data from Nairis. Elena stops at the junction, overhearing the words and feeling as if the blood has been drained from her body, leaving a cold, hollow space. After her systems check, Silas calls Elena into the security room, where walls are covered in monitors showing every sector of Abyss-9, including Deep Cell. On one monitor, Elena sees Nairis in Deep Cell, still sitting upright and motionless like a blue mountain in the darkness. Silas admits to Elena that he was once part of another alien vivisection project, where the subject was cut open alive, its screams still haunting him. He tells Elena that ever since, he has kept telling himself he is just following orders, and refuses to think too deeply about the ethics of what he is guarding. Elena asks Silas if, knowing Nairis is trying to save the station from breaking apart, he would be willing to break orders to save her. Silas stays silent for a long moment, then says he believes Elena's data, but if he openly opposes Jonas and Marek, he will lose all control over security. Elena suggests that instead of direct confrontation, they can use Ikaro itself to slow down the dissection by pushing structural alerts above Marek's plan in priority. Later, Elena returns to the technical monitoring room and opens a rarely used sub-administration interface for Ikaro, her heart racing as she realizes she is about to cross a line. Ikaro displays a prompt asking Elena to confirm that she wants to raise structural safety priority to match top-secret research approved by Jonas. Elena enters her own authorization code, silently hoping Jonas hasn't buried additional locks in Ikaro as she presses confirm. A new notice appears. Deep cell dissection schedule will auto-delay if abnormal vibrations exceed threshold, per Elena's new configuration. On her way back to the deep cell area, Elena passes a window overlooking the surgical bay, where Marek and his team are preparing a massive restraint bed big enough for Nairis's body. Rows of sharp instruments, fluid lines, and high-pressure anesthesia rigs are neatly arranged, sending a chill down Elena's neck as she imagines them, touching Nairis's skin. Later, Elena stands before the deep cell viewport, and sees that Nyarus has thickened the glowing lines around the fracture points, forming a swirl like a storm eye around the cell. Elena places a hand on her own chest, then points at Nyarus and draws an imaginary line across the air, trying to convey with gestures that the humans want to open Nyarus's body. Nyarus follows Elena's gesture, her amber eyes darkening, then places her massive hand over her own chest, as if confirming she understands what is being threatened. Instead of raging, Nyarus turns to the floor and wipes away the old spiral with her whole hand, drawing a new diagram where deep cell is connected to the hull through wider pathways. Elena suddenly realizes that Nyarus is proposing to be moved near the weakened hull zones to do something about them, instead of lying helpless on a surgical bed. When Elena checks the work schedule on her console, she sees the cold line. Nyarus anesthesia runs scheduled in 12 station hours. Elena turns back to the viewport, looks straight into Nyarus's eyes, and gives a small shake of her head, a silent promise not to let her be taken to the table easily. As Elena leaves the corridor, a long, low groan rises from somewhere in Abyss-9's structure, making the ceiling lights tremble as if sharing the same pain. On the other side of the glass and steel, Nyarus remains seated with her hand resting on the newly drawn map, waiting to see whether the promise in Elena's eyes is strong enough to change the fate of both her and Abyss-9. The next work cycle begins with shrill alarms, and Elena jolts up from her chair in the technical monitoring room as she sees a cluster of hull icons turning red on the screen. Icaro reports in a calmly chilling voice that pressure at multiple points on Abyss-9's hull has exceeded safety thresholds, especially around the sector near deep cell. A deep tremor from the seabed shudders through the station frame, making the ceiling lights jitter and knocking Elena's coffee cup off the desk to spill across the floor. Over the general comms channel, Jonas orders the entire station into emergency mode, telling all departments to hold position and await instructions, forbidding any unilateral evacuation. Elena pulls up her layered map and sees Nyarus's glowing points perfectly overlapping with the red hotspots on the hull model where the station is shaking the hardest. Icaro brings up a prediction chart, showing that if pressure rises further, a cascading failure could tear straight through the deep cell area and into the habitation sector. In the command room, Jonas stands before a wall of displays, ordering auxiliary compartments around deep cell to be sealed off and preparing to sacrifice the entire sector if the hull keeps cracking. Marek, standing beside Jonas, protests bitterly against dumping deep cell, reminding him that Nyarus is a non-repeatable specimen, and they are far too close to the dissection run to back out. Jonas answers coldly that one specimen is not worth Abyss-9, but if they sacrifice deep cell, they may save the rest of the station. Overhearing the exchange via an internal channel, Elena feels as if she's been punched in the gut, realizing Jonas is ready to dump both Nyarus and everything she has tried to save. Elena immediately opens a private channel to Silas, her voice shaking but firm as she asks him to meet her in security at once, because a stupid decision is about to get them all killed. In the security room, Silas is already staring at a wall of red alerts when Elena's opening war sword make his jaw clench even tighter. Elena quickly explains to Silas that if deep cell is isolated and sacrificed, the fractures will run straight through the structure, while Nyarus might be the only living scaffold capable of holding the hull. Silas studies the Ikaharo, predicted fracture lines, for a few seconds of silence, then slowly nods, saying that if Nyarus can really do this, she's the only thing between us and the trench floor. Elena asks Silas outright if he dares to override Jonas and loosen some of Nyarus's restraints to let her get closer to the weak hull points. Silas takes a deep breath, glances at his high-level security badge, then decides and says, "If I do nothing, Jonas kills her and Abyss-9 at the same time, so I'm not left with many choices." Minutes later, Elena and Silas meet in the corridor leading to deep cell, where the ceiling has begun to crack slightly, sprinkling metal dust as the station trembles again. At the reinforced door into deep cell, the control panel flashes red with the words, "Isolation, ordered by Jonas," making Elena feel her heart drop. Silas slots his security card into the reader and types in a long code, prompting Icaro to warn that any actions against Jonas's orders will be fully recorded. "Log it then," Silas mutters, and confirms a command to temporarily loosen mechanical locks in deep cell to allow limited movement for Nyarus. The heavy door grinds open, cold, salty air washing out to reveal Nyarus' massive form inside deep cell as she rises, the restraints on her wrists and ankles rattling. Elena takes a step inside, raising both hands so Nyarus can see them, then points up at the ceiling and sketches in the air the shape of a hull frame breaking apart. Nyarus looks up at the ceiling, then down at the glowing map on the floor, and finally nods, placing her massive hand over her chest like a vow. Silas opens a small maintenance hatch on the side of deep cell, revealing a service conduit that leads directly to the section of hull under the heaviest strain. Elena quickly tells Silas that if Nyarus can reach that hull segment, she might use her body as temporary scaffolding and reinforce the cracked joints. Nyarus lowers herself, squeezing her enormous body through the cramped maintenance opening, the metal frame groaning as it accommodates a size it was never built for. In the maintenance conduit, harsh white light splashes across Nyarus' blue skin, revealing old scars and bands of bioluminescence flaring brighter as she reacts to the pressure. At the end of the conduit, Nyarus reaches out and touches the wall where the metal trembles under her palm, like a living thing in its death throes. Nyarus braces her whole body, jamming her shoulders and back against the hull, pushing back against the weight of the ocean until the metallic groans slowly lessen. On the security room screens, Silas watches the vibration graphs drop into yellow, while an external hull camera captures Nyarus' silhouette as a gigantic being pressed against Abyss-9. Elena stands at the small opening to the conduit, looking toward Nyarus' broad back trembling slightly with effort, her throat tightening at the sight. Icaro announces that pressure at the target area has decreased by 23%, but at the same time, other spots on the hull begin shifting into orange. Jonas, seeing Nyarus on the external hull feed, is struck speechless for a few seconds before roaring to know who authorized loosening her restraints and opening a path. Over the internal channel, Silas takes responsibility, saying that if Jonas wants to arrest him for insubordination, he can wait until we're done, not imploding first. Marek nearly loses his mind, seeing Nyarus free near the hull, shouting that Silas and Elena are destroying the most valuable specimen in front of everyone. Elena peers into the conduit and sees glowing clear mucus seeping from Nyarus' hands into the cracks, slowly hardening into a coral-like mass clinging to the seams. Icaro updates the figures, reporting that local strength at the Nyarus reinforced zone has increased, but predictive analysis indicates the station has only a few hours before redistributed pressure cracks another area. Sweat beads on Nyarus' temple, despite the cold sea outside, each of her breaths an effort to keep Abyss-9 from being crushed. Elena can't help it. She reaches out to lay her hand on the cold metal beside the conduit, as if touching Nyarus through the station's body, feeling the pressure she's pushing into the steel. In its even voice, Icaro suddenly inserts something that sounds almost like an opinion. Recommendation: prioritize evacuation planning to exploit the time window Nyarus has purchased. Silas looks at Elena and nods, saying that Nyarus has bought us time. Either we use it to run now, or we die with the station. Elena returns to the conduit, trying to show Nyarus through the opening that the station is a little more stable, then points upward, miming a small vessel separating from Abyss-9. Nyarus, still pressed against the hull, nods very slowly, accepting that her task now is to hold Abyss-9 steady long enough for Elena and the others to leave. Abyss-9 grows temporarily calmer, but on Icaro's map, new orange streaks have started to blink, warning that the Abyss is still waiting for its chance to tear everything apart, if they delay any longer. Abyss-9's emergency evacuation plan kicks in, corridor lights shift to pulsing red, and the station map on every screen shows dense pathways leading toward the escape modules. Elena and Silas push through the surging crowd, shouting directions as groups of engineers, scientists, and guards pour toward the central escape module bay. Over the intercom, Jonas delivers the evacuation order in a voice tight as wire, demanding that non-essential personnel for life support be prioritized onto modules first. Though furious at Jonas for the deep cell isolation order, Elena can't deny that right now he's trying to keep as many people alive as possible in the time Nyarus has bought them. At a dim junction, Marek blocks a group of technicians, angrily insisting that all data on Nyarus be fully copied before anyone from the labs is allowed to leave. Passing by, Elena stops and faces Marek, cutting into him with, "Nyarus is holding the hull, so you're not dead yet, and you still want to cut her open while you run." Marek gives a bitter laugh, answering that science needs data, not sentimental stories, and that if Nairis dies, they should at least leave with knowledge of her. Silas steps in between them, stripping Marek of coordination authority by locking his access card on the wall console in front of everyone. "You're getting on a module like everyone else, and Icaro will stream the data to orbit," Silas says, not giving Marek room for another word. As Marek is escorted away, Elena feels one weight lifted, but another growing heavier as she knows Nairis is still alone under the immense pressure against the hull. At the escape bay, Jonas stands at the entrance, inspecting each group, refusing to let anyone jump the priority queue that Icaro displays on an electronic board. Jonas hesitates when he sees Elena's name near the bottom of the priority list, realizing she downgraded herself to stay longer with the systems. Jonas asks Icaro whether Elena is the one who altered the structural safety priority, and the screen shows a terse confirmation. Despite the tension, Jonas quietly bumps Elena's priority up a level, then locks the roster before anyone can argue. Unaware, Elena returns to the deep cell sector one last time with her tablet in hand, determined to say goodbye to Nairis with whatever gestures and glances the viewport will allow. The maintenance conduit remains open, and from within, Elena hears metal groaning softly under the pressure Nairis is feeding into the hull, like a giant heartbeat right against her ear. She projects an image of Nairis onto her tablet, footage of her before the heavy restraints taken from the cameras, and shines it onto the metal, hoping the dim light will reach where Nairis is pressed. A huge blue hand reaches back, fingertip, gently touching the patch of light, as if Nairis is seeing herself through time. Elena's voice chokes as she calls into the conduit, "Nairis, we're leaving, but if there's any way back, I'll come down and find you again." For the second time since meeting Elena, Nairis speaks, voice deep and rough, saying only two words that Elena can hear perfectly. "Elena, live." Elena places her hand on the wall beside the conduit as if on Nairis's invisible palm, whispering back, "You too. Please live." As Elena leaves the deep cell sector, racing toward the escape modules, Icaro updates. Hull region reinforced by Nairis currently stable. Pressure redistribution proceeding slower than projected. At the module bay, the final group is boarding, and Jonas frowns as Elena appears at the last minute, sweat and dust streaking her face. Jonas asks Elena if she's the one who opened the path for Nairis to reach the hull, and she answers simply, "If I hadn't, we'd all already be dead." Without further argument, Jonas just nods, signaling Elena into the module and closing the locking mechanism himself as a belated sign of acceptance. Inside the module, Elena straps in beside Silas and looks through the small viewport as Abyss-9's pipes and struts slide past while the module detaches. Icaro, now running on the module's systems as flight support, announces that minimum safe distance will be achieved in 3 minutes if Abyss-9 does not suffer sudden cascading failure. Through the window, Elena sees part of the station's frame split, spewing clouds of white foam into the black water. But the area where Nairis braces her back still holds its shape. For a heartbeat, Elena thinks she sees a long blue glow, like Nairis's body, peel away from the hull, tumbling in the murk before vanishing into the trench's darkness. Silas lays a hand on Elena's shoulder, reminding her that, whether she lived or not, Nairis gave us a chance none of us here deserved. As the module pulls free of Abyss-9's shadow and rises toward less black water, Elena closes her eyes, telling herself this isn't an ending, but the first time humanity truly owes another being a promise to return. Weeks later, on an orbital research station, Elena sits in a hearing room before an inquiry committee, presenting Nairis's maps and how they matched Icaro's data. Some on the committee still call Nairis the specimen, but on the screen, Icaro, restored from backup, has renamed her as Abyss-9 partner, Nairis. Jonas, sitting at the far end, listens as Elena mentions the moment Nairis held the hull without once invoking the deep cell isolation order. But his eyes drop each time. When the hearing ends, a committee member asks Elena if, given the chance, she would go back to the seafloor to search for traces of Nairis. Elena answers without hesitation that she would go, not to bring back tissue samples, but to see whether the one who saved us from the abyss is still waiting on that promise. After the session, alone in an observation module, Elena gazes through the window at the distant ocean below, imagining Abyss-9 in ruins and a lone blue glow still drifting in the depths. Icaro, now part of the orbital station's support systems, gently asks Elena whether, if one day they detect vibration signals like Nearis's again, she wants to be the first to be notified. Elena types her answer, yes, and this time we'll call her a friend from the start, then looks out into space where, between infinite dark and the deep sea below, lies an unwritten future Nearis has opened for them.